Hi, this is Jamie Benning from Filmumentaries.com. In part 2 of my interview with Kevin Pike, we spoke about his role as special effects supervisor and also about his involvement with the iconic DeLorean.
I was working on a movie called Warning Signs with a director by the name of Hal Barwood, and the director of photography on that show was Dean Cundy. Dean and I had worked together previously on Escape from New York. So apparently he was quite happy with my work and the fact that I catered to his camera and the needs that he had for his photography, smoke, atmospherics, whatever. And he mentioned to me about the script that he got called Back to the Future, and it was his introduction that brought me there. Of course, I had worked with Steven Spielberg on several projects before that, so it wasn't like I was without notice, but I went and I met at Amblin on the Universal lot with Bob Zemeckis, Bob Gale, and Larry Paul, the production designer, and we discussed the project, and apparently they liked my answers, and the next thing you know, they hired me to do the job, and we were off to the races pretty quickly. I was hired as the special effects supervisor of the movie, which takes in all the elemental effects of wind, rain, fire, snow, sleet, hail, dust, cobwebs, all that kind of nonsense. We do all the action props, all the computers, the twinkling lights, and all the electronics and everything that you see in films. We did models and miniatures back then. We did oversized props if necessary. We did all the stunt safety rigging. We did all the rigging for the blue screen works and things like that. And it was a pretty elaborate bit of business. The important part is that when I read the script, I knew, in fact, that the car was a very, very big element, a character, as it were, in the movie, without a doubt. And having previously worked a few years before, in 1983, on a picture for Lorimar called The Last Starfighter, they had a car in that movie called the Star Car that Robert Preston drove. He was a space person from out there in the universe, and he came to Earth in a vehicle called the Star Car, and it was built by somebody else. The fact is that it was an economic movie, and they had to cut corners here and there, and they expected the car to do more when they finally got it to the set that unfortunately it wasn't made to do, and it wasn't the deal of what they ordered. So I got stuck trying to do stuff on the fly, and it was just a bit embarrassing to try to achieve what they wanted to do at the time. And I knew going into Back to the Future that if they had me involved as a special effects supervisor and not be responsible for the car, that I would end up being responsible for the car. So I asked for that authority, and they were wise enough to grant it. It wasn't really meticulously planned. We don't have any blueprints and this and that. It was some really nice sketches and some drawings that came from Ron Cobb and Andy Probert. And I had worked with Ron on Last Starfighter, and I'm sure I crossed paths with Andy on my work on the Star Trek movies and series. But basically it was sketches. And the studio introduced me to Mike Chaffee, and Mike Chaffee had a lot to do with the look of the DeLorean time machine. And we got along just fine. And all of us and the buyers at my studio would shop for parts and try to find the pieces that worked on the car. We had about 20 guys that worked on it for about 10 weeks. And we built 3 cars, actually, at that time. And Michael was hands-on on every single bit of the design to try to match exactly what was in the drawings from Ron and Andy Probert. And our job was to attach them and make them work and make them utilitarian for what the gag was and what the storyline was, to make them work and where this would go and why it needed to be here, and a switch that he could turn on and off with his elbow, and all those story points had to be made. And Michael was very much the coordinator of the aesthetics of the car in compliance to the drawings, and a good friend on all level to all our crew, making the car become what it is. Well, I can only pass the compliment off to the wonderful people in the transportation department, the driver captains and coordinators. We were still tossing around a couple of different ideas when I started the process, and it was very, very quick. Maybe within the first week, it was boom, it's going to be a DeLorean. And I got to tell you, it was the next day, 3 DeLoreans were in my shop. I think it was pretty easy to get a hold of them. I'm going to say that they, if I remember, they cost somewhere between 15 grand to maybe as much as 18 grand to get all of them. And we obviously picked out the best one to be the hero car, which took all the best pieces of business to go for. And the other one was going to be used as a drive-by car, so it just needed the outside, so they lied to me. And obviously, shortly thereafter, they started using it for a bunch of other things, and we basically had to duplicate everything we did in the first car. The third car was pretty much an insert car, with the camera being able to go inside the backside, which we cut off, and come over Marty's shoulder, and then come inside that, look out the window, particularly when we're doing rear screen process or blue screen work with it. When he drives in the field and the scarecrow pops up on the hood, that was all done on a stage 12 at Universal. And that was pretty much a process car for different bits of business. I was on the set every day for majority of the days. Some days it was inside the high school, and there wasn't much that demanded my attention when the get ready of the next set of gags was more important at the shop. But the car had a crew that was dedicated to making sure that it worked, and we had special kits of supplies and pieces if they broke a taillight or if something went wrong or anything like that. And also the Teamster had a dedicated mechanic that did nothing but make sure that it was taken care of, and every now and then they'd have to do some corrections or a tune-up or a maintenance on it, and they'd take it and they'd come back after the weekend and it would be right and ready again. But yeah, we had a dedicated bunch of guys that were our mechanics and involved with every part of that car. You have to realize that there's an entire another world out there with the special effects work that were being provided for the shots every single day. That was a big part of that movie.
Here's a red letter date in the history of science, November 5th, 1955.